one of the greatest challenges that we have had is that we have been looking at conservation as a future business. So when we say it's a future business, then we take it out of our hands and place it in the future. But we have forgotten that it's our business today. And the business today means that as we conserve for the future generations, we need to figure out who are they. So it becomes a business for everybody. Because the future generation is me, is you, and our offsprings.
Right. But of course, let's talk practical now. Because at the end of the day, someone would be like, we've always been saying that this earth that we're in today, we've borrowed it from our children. And so it is for the future. I mean, this is why they argue that conservation is actually conserving not for now, but for the future generations. How do we turn around that particular mindset now?
So the turning around is that for you and me to discover what's in it for me. And the idea is of getting conservation into the business mode. The business mode means that you benefit, I benefit, and because we benefit, then we're going to take care of the resource. And that's what we are trying to put in the hands of everybody, that there's a benefit for you and a benefit for me. And once we explore that sustainably, then we protect the resource and it can be used for the future generation.
Right. You speak of sustainability, and it's been a very hard nut to crack for so many people. How do we conserve, sustainably? And the question is what then? What should be the components of sustainable conservation then?
So the sustainable conservation components means that you're going to use equitably, meaning that you're going to consume not what you need, but what we all need. So the consumption patterns have to be addressed. The population patterns have to be addressed. The engagement has to be addressed. So that as we sit on the table, then we define those platforms. But as we define the platforms, one component that we have not been aware of or taking tap into that was the element of the youth. So we are conserving for them, but they're not on the table. So if you're not on the table of decision making, then you're a spectator. So we need not you on the bench, not you on the ground, but on the table.
On the table.
And that's what we are trying to do now. The business of conservation should be in the hands of the youth, and they should be on the table.
Right. So why have the youth not been on this very amazing dinner table then?
So the challenge that has been happening is that we see the youth as people who don't know, people who have no experience. What do you know? What can you tell me? I know it all. I have an experience. I'm older than you. But we have forgotten that now things have changed. They have better ideas. They have innovative ideas. They have solutions to some of the contemporary challenges we are facing. So we need to take time to say, oh, hold on, back up a little bit. Listen to the young people, to the youth. What do they think?
But
How do they see the challenge?
Do you think the young people already are pushing for this? Because most of the time, we're always told that freedom is not just given to you. You have to actually fight for it. You have to work for it. Are you seeing a sense of young people sitting on the fence? Or are you seeing a sense that young people are passionately eager to actually get on this particular table of discussion on this very important matter of conservation? What's the current situation in your opinion?
The current situation is that we have not been able to give them the space. So because we occupy the space, they can't find themselves in the space. So we need to figure out a model to move a little bit back, bring them on board, for them to first understand the challenge and see whether they acquaint themselves with the challenge, they understand it well, for them to figure out the solutions. And some of those things, we have to use models like education. We have to mentor them. We have to bring them on board. And as we do that, you're equipping them with the tools they need. You're challenging them. You're showing them. And you're holding their hands towards the problem so that they can solve them.
And so what are you doing already about this? Because at the end of the day, when anybody tells me that we need to, we have to, it raises some concerns that we still not are doing. So these are things that we're still urging people to do. So what is really happening on the ground?
So what's happening on the ground now, that's why we're having a business of conservation, the business of conservation, which is an EDU, African Leadership University platform. And we have a School of Wildlife Conservation, where we are running the mindset across the continent, the first of its kind on the continent, to bring young people from all over Africa to come here in Kigali as a model for the continent to figure out how can we solve this. And together as a continent, to start saying, we own wildlife, we should own the challenge and so the solutions. And we're also running the mid-career professionals to come and mentor them, to come and share the experiences. And as we do that, then we take the young people onto the next model.
Right, being the first is a very major highlight. But then what happens after this first meeting of its kind, or this first conference on business of conservation of its kind, is the major thing that we need to be looking at. So what plans do you see? What sort of recommendations are you looking at?
So one of the things that we are doing now, for example, one of the interesting tools is Meet the Leads, where now you pitch your idea, you put it on the table, People around you look at the idea, and then they put in capital needed, they put in resources needed, they put in capacity needed to drive that model, to drive that program. And that's what people are doing right now, sharing those experiences, writing the support and ideas and partnerships to collaborate on some of the ideas on the continent.
But it's not the first time we're having conversations on conservation. I mean, a lot of
business.
Yes, but still, or globally, or in a general sense, the issue of conservation has been spoken about quite often. So what are we doing differently, or what are you doing differently that will actually not make it just a talk shop?
Absolutely, I agree with you and hear you. What you're doing differently is bringing an element of trade. So I've been looking at conservation to appeal the social, traditional status of people. Oh, it's good. But it's only good if it can be traded. It's only good when it can put on the table, you sell, I buy, you give to me, and I take. So that's what we are trying to create as a model, and that's why people are excited about this, because it's now a business. It's not the contemporary model of conservation for the sake of protecting resources and conserving them. Now we are talking about the idea of protecting for business and for revenue.
Right, because initially it was all about the environment is our life.
Yes.
If we destroy the environment, we cannot be able to survive.
Absolutely.
So are we trying to say that that particular mindset, that particular line of thought is now failing? That we're now saying, let's think business, let's think money, because probably money is what makes the world go around. Is this what you're saying?
That's what we are trying to do now. For example, if you talk about the environment, you're talking about rain, you're talking about the wetlands, rivers and lakes. For me, or for a local person who has a challenge of livelihoods, it doesn't make sense to me. I want to get food. So killing an elephant to sell elephant tusks appeals to me, because then I can get money, buy food, and provide for my household. So how do we turn that around to say, hey, instead of killing, let's use tourism as a model. Let's do crafts. Let's get unemployed youth engaged in working in some of these establishments. So that way, I'm getting a revenue, and I'm putting it on the table at home, feeding my household, and then the elephant appeals to me. And that way, I have incentives needed, I have revenues needed, and I can protect the elephant.